Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is I am, the one and only, Silver the Hedgehog here. And ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year, everybody. And we are welcome you all for the sake of the brand new year that we now into 2025. So I kind of believe time flies, doesn't it? And for a special occasion, for able to celebrate the new year for 2025, we're about to be presenting you all the first Let's Play we are tackling through in terms of 2025. And this time we're going back into Sonic the Hedgehog kind of series. And this time we get into the latest release. And that's what appears to be Sonic X Shadow Generations for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, and of course the Nintendo Switch. So it may look like multi-platforms is not going to give up anytime soon, at least until specifically later on that we're about to be expecting to get Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, but that'll be for a later time. So yes, we're about to be tackling through, let's just say, a remastered version of Sonic Generations plus a brand new entry in terms of the Sonic franchise. So basically, remember during forms of in 2021, there was a game called Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Well, basically for that game, you do able to actually get a remastered version, or technically a port, for Super Mario 3D World onto the Nintendo Switch, but with a new game added in, which appears to be Bowser's Fury. Think of like that, except it's now Sonic's turn with the remastered version of Sonic Generations, which did originally came out in 2011, but then we actually got ourselves a brand new game into the table too, with Shadow Generations. So, and I'm actually really looking forward to this, because we were originally decided able to tackle through Sonic Generations for the 3DS, but as far as what Tiana, she's already explained about this, or potentially speaking of, I believe, Joy did somehow already mention about this before, that unfortunately though, that particular Let's Play will be delayed, probably in a later time in 2025 if we able to actually get the right timing for it. So for the time being, we'll pretty much have to go through Sonic X Shadow Generations from now on. So basically though, as soon as you're able to actually get into the game selection screen right here, it looks rather similar to the forms of how it does it in Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, doesn't it? Well, for one thing, about the fact that you can able to actually choose between Sonic Generations or Shadow Generations. So, with the actual screen transition, if you manage able to go and select either left or right, so yeah, it's actually kind of interesting about the fact that they somehow managed to reuse that feature from the likes of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, but there are certain differences. Like for one, obviously if you couldn't tell, well, much like the forms of how it does it in Sonic Colors Ultimate, that basically though we did indeed manage to able to download the entire DLC, meaning about the fact that we're able to expect to get ourselves some cool extra content, ranging from character skins, as well as some skill points, specifically in Sonic Generations, as well as extra background music pack for Shadow Generations most likely. And on top of all that stuff though, once you do manage to able to actually pre-order the game, or if you do manage to have yourselves the Day 1 edition, you're able to actually access one of those character skins for modern Sonic. So, but I'll explain more about that in a moment, because as you can tell, the main focus of this playthrough, as far as I'm aware, we're about to be experiencing Sonic Generations first, and then we'll get into Shadow Generations after Sonic Generations, similar to the forms of how it does it back in 2021, that we already did done Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, where basically though we're about to be tackling through Super Mario 3D World first, and then Bowser's Fury afterwards. So we feel like about the fact that we might as well do the exact same treatment from here. So let's get into it with Sonic Generations. Originally came out on 2011 for the PlayStation 3/Xbox 360 and PC Steam. But before we get into more details about this though, let's watch this intro cutscene first. So yes, the intro cutscene plays exactly like the forms of how it does in the original version of Sonic Generations, but with one major exception. And that's what appears to be for the fact that, as you can tell, they finally managed able to add in sound effects, ranging from boosting to stomping, as well as sliding, and you pretty much named the idea about that. So yeah, that's actually a pretty cool way to able to actually have that at long last. So, because normally back in 2011, there aren't any sound effects on that particular opening cutscene. So either way though, so as you can see on screen, we're about to be dive into the option selection menu at first glance, mainly because as far as I'm aware, I'm going to switch off the Omochao tutorial as well as the forms of the control display. And even especially noticeable, I have to turn on the challenge tries because why not? I'm up for the challenge. And on top of all that stuff though, there's also the control type here and there as well, where basically though, if you set it on normal, basically though we have to get used to with the Sonic Frontiers control style, or if you're much more comfortable with the old retro control scheme, you can be able to actually select legacy controls, which personally speaking though, for this game in particular, I'm pretty much more accustomed to the legacy control types, because obviously though, if you ever played the original version of the game before, you know exactly what to expect. If you managed able to try to do homing attack with X button twice, because yes, if you couldn't tell already, the version we're going to be playing on is the PlayStation 4 version, similar to the forms of how it does it in the past Sonic Let's Plays, ranging from Sonic Colors Ultimate, alongside with the forms of Sonic Frontiers, and even especially noticeable with the forms of, well, I can't really exactly for sure how do I explain this, because either way though, it has been quite a while since we actually tackled something relates to Sonic the Hedgehog since the original version of Sonic CD for the Sega Mega CD. So anyway, so let's dive right into Sonic Generations as a remastered version of the game. Now, as you can see right there, we now actually have ourselves a file selection screen this time, because normally, previously though, on the original version of the game, you only have one save file. It doesn't matter what version of the game you played on, either on the PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 or PC Steam. Basically though, there's only one save slot, whilst now, in the remastered version of Sonic Generations, well, they now have not one, but 3 save slots now. So this means you can able to replay this game as many times as you want this time around, without needing to worry about the forms of trying to create a different account and all that jazz. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell. So, yeah, with that being said, let's hop into Sonic Generations remastered version portion of Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, like I said before, it's about the fact that Sonic Generations did originally came out during the forms of in 2011 to mark the 20th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog, as you probably expect at this point. Now, technically, we've already did done our Let's Play of Sonic Generations before, back in 2017. I'm guessing the reason why we did that in that year to able to actually celebrate the release of Sonic Forces, despite the fact that every nowadays Sonic Forces has now officially become a lot more underwhelming to say the least. So, but as you can tell, we somehow immediately got started with the first act of Green Hill Zone. And yes, Green Hill Zone was originated from Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991. So yeah, you pretty much expected what to expect at that point. So anyway, so before we get into more details about this though, we have to watch yet another cutscene where basically though, that's what the story unfolds.
He'll be here any second.
Hey guys, what's going on? You having a party or something?
Surprise!
Aw, you guys.
It's kinda impossible to surprise you.
You totally got me this time. I had no idea.
Yeah, right. Happy birthday, Sonic. Hope you like this.
Like it? I love it. What?
Sonic,
Ah!
what is that?
Oh wow, I was not expecting that the BallenTF Chow was also invited to Sonic's birthday party, because normally in the original version of the game, the Chows was not there apart from Cheese the Chow, because obviously Cheese was Cream's companion. So anyway, so we've somehow managed able to get sucked up in the actual white space, thanks to the forms of this mysterious foe, which obviously though if you already seen the original version of the game before, basically this particular monstrosity of the beast was actually called the Time Eater. So anyway, so with that being said, let's get into Act 2 of Green Hill Zone, and this time we're going to be able to take control of modern Sonic. And relatively speaking, though, it's about the fact that if you ever played the original version of the game before, basically though, Act 1 you're able to actually take control of classic Sonic, whilst meanwhile for Act 2, you're able to actually take control of modern Sonic. And I'm gonna say, it is so awesome to be able to go back into this game again after so many years, since originally we already did this game on the Xbox 360 version back in 2017, thanks to not only Mario, but as well as Blossom as well. So yeah, that seems pretty cool and interesting at the same time. So anyways though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that obviously though, since this is the beginning of the 2025 year, so this means about the fact that today's date, of course, is the 1st of January today, in some cases in 2025. So we are no longer going to be able to be mentioning about 2024 unless there are some current events that's about to happen. So anyways though, so relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that whenever I first saw the announcement of the remastered version of Sonic Generations, but not just that, but usually relatively speaking though, if they decided able to add it in Shadow into the mix as well, I was doubly hyped about the forms of this whole announcement of the forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations, thanks to the forms of the State of Play Direct back in during the forms have been around almost a year ago, since by the end of January in 2024. Like, I was a little bit mixed on it at first, but then when Shadow pops out of nowhere, I was immediately hyped about it, because not only we can able to experience the glorious Sonic Generations all over again, but this time you're able to actually have yourselves an additional game as well, which later on became Shadow Generations as part of the forms of the Double Pack. So yeah, that's actually pretty awesome at the same time, especially concerning for the fact that this particular game, alongside with the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, that will basically become the forms of the entire campaign of Fearless Year of Shadow campaign, which means about the fact that during the forms have been last year in 2024, we actually got ourselves a ton of content based off from Shadow the Hedgehog, in some cases the Ultimate Life Forms. Yeah, that's actually pretty cool and everything, especially concerning for the fact that Shadow was actually a pretty cool Sonic character to me though, despite it does have some issues nowadays. But anyway, so that pretty much does it for Green Hill Zone Act 2, and somehow we've rescued Tails right after the forms of that particular stage has been ended. So there we go.
Thanks, Sonic. That was awful. I couldn't tell where I was or what had happened. Ugh, like I was trapped in a nightmare.
Well, you're safe now, and that's what's important. Is it just me, or does Green Hill look different?
This isn't South Island, and all the color and life's been drained from it. Totally strange.
And no stranger than fighting evil genies or saving aliens in an interstellar amusement park. Right now, we should focus on finding our friends.
We can start over there. That skyline looks familiar, but I can't be sure.
Well, that's as good a lead as any, Tails. Back in a flash.
Wow, that was crazy, Sonic. You weren't kidding. It's like you never left.
Now, as far as I'm aware, the story in this game is pretty much unchanged, apart from few exceptions. Like, for instance, though, as you can tell, the dialogue has been changed thanks to the forms of a different writer, which, as a result, from what I found out, remember during the forms of been Sonic Frontiers, right? Oh, and also we can able to find Chao in each and every single level this time. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. It's also very familiar too, because if you ever played Sonic Advance 3 before, basically though, it's kind of like that, except the fact that this time around though, well, we'll talk more about that if we somehow manage to dive into the next stage, because as far as I'm aware, we ended up in the Classic era. So this means about the fact that we'll come across into one stage per game. Like for instance though, we've already experienced Green Hill Zone based off from Sonic the Hedgehog 1, and now let's get into the second stage right here. And this stage might be feels a bit familiar to you if you ever experienced Sonic the Hedgehog 2 before. Specifically though, not only for the Mega Drive, but also for the Genesis as well. And that's what appears to be Chemical Plant Zone. So yes, Chemical Plant was there, especially concerning for the fact that every nowadays, when it comes to future Sonic games, they really love reusing several level themes, which does lack originality, but regardless of everything else though, it's about the fact that, like, for example, with Sonic Forces, alongside with the forms of certain cyberspace segments in Sonic Frontiers, basically though, you might be familiar with the forms of level set pieces here and there. Like for instance though, they love reusing not only Green Hill Zone, because it's the actual homeland of any sorts, but it's also with the forms of Chemical Plant as well. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that I honestly don't mind Chemical Plant level in Sonic Generations, because obviously though, everything else goes like fully recreated into 3D visuals and all that stuff, which makes things a little bit more spectacular more than anything, especially back in 2011 during that time. So, relatively speaking though, everything else will become to expect at this point. Like for instance though, just like the forms of how it does in the original version of Sonic Generations, you're able to once again able to hunt down those red star rings. However, there's one new improvement I gladly appreciate, and that, if you manage able to obtain one of those red star rings, as you can see on screen, basically though, it now actually shows you which specific red star ring you somehow collected. So, yeah, I very much appreciate about that, because unlike in Sonic Generations, the original version of the game, basically though, you have to take a massive guess of where exactly does that specific red star ring was actually located. And there's also these Chao, like I mentioned this earlier, about the fact that we can able to actually try to find them too. But this time around though, unlike in Sonic Advance 3, that you need to find all 10 of these Chao in each zone, well usually in some acts, including certain hub worlds as well, that you do need to find some of them in hub world, and you do need to find 3 of these Chaos each in each and every single act. Now, as far as I'm aware, in Sonic Generations, well, usually relatively speaking though, is about the fact that we need to find, or what Classify was saying, we do need to find 3 of these Chaos in each and every single stages, within both Classic Sonic and Modern Sonic as well. And of course, just like in Sonic Advance 3 though, you need to able to do a lot of scavenger hunts when it comes to finding those Chaos, and just like in Sonic Advance 3 though, you can't leave the level if you do manage to find these Chaos, so you have to complete the stage. So, yeah, it's kind of like that though, except the fact that I'm pretty concerned for the fact that, well, I know it has been quite a while since we actually played this game, because I think the last time I actually played this game, fundamentally speaking was back on the Switch version, including the Xbox One version as well. And speaking of which though, it's about the fact that depending on what version of the game you own, for Sonic X Shadow Generations, well, to be more accurate though, if you're able to actually experience Sonic Generations remastered version of the game, basically you do realize it's about the fact that the loading times are much better this time, because of how the fact that the game was now onto Blu-ray drives, onto the forms of specific gaming consoles, all that stuff, including with the forms of the Nintendo Switch game card for the Nintendo Switch. Basically though, the loading times are non-existent. Apart from one particular game in mind, that's what appears to be Shadow Generations, which we'll talk more about the forms of Shadow Generations, again, as soon as we're able to actually able to fully complete Sonic Generations. Now I say fully complete, because unlike in Journey Forms in 2017, that basically though, both Mario and Blossom both somehow ignored the 100% completion of the entire game, usually the original version of Sonic Generations. Like, they somehow ignored not only the red star rings, but as well as the forms of any other challenge acts. Well, I'm very appreciative about the fact that we might also do the exact same treatment as the forms of back in 2022, where Sonic did somehow manage able to tackle through Sonic Colors Ultimate. I'm actually going to be going for a 400% completion playthrough, apart from 2 exceptions, which obviously though, if you know what I mean, if we get into the ending portion of Sonic Generations, which you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, for the time being though, we'll try our best if we're able to actually collect a certain amount of red star rings if possible, but if we ended up missing a couple of them, then we can able to actually hop back into any other levels at any time. So, and also as far as I'm aware, that we'll be saving those Chao for later, just in case we don't want to able to wasting too much time, because I will try my best able to achieve as many of those S ranks.
Sonic!
Tails!
This is definitely the chemical plant, but we're not remotely on Westside Island. Did that monster do this?
We'll figure it out later. Our friends come first.
Also, as far as I'm aware, I did manage to try my best to complete a certain amount of stages as quickly as possible, but I will admit it though right away, it does take me some bit of practice to know any other layouts, but oh well. So we've somehow completed Chemical Plant and able to rescue Amy.
You saved me, Sonic! I'll be sure to return the favor next time around.
Not really worrying about that right now, Amy.
Oh, and by the way, there's one thing I totally forgot to mention about this earlier. I love the fact that every time one of you manage to rescue Sonic's friends, like for example, we somehow rescued Tails and recently Amy, well, it's more specifically though, if you try to rescue Sonic's friends as Modern Sonic, basically Modern Sonic can now speak during the forms of the interactions after the events of after rescuing those specific friends. So, yeah, because unlike the forms of how it does in the original version of the game, Sonic doesn't speak at all, apart from the fact that he does like several expressions, depending on the forms of the actual conversations in certain characters. So, yeah, I fully appreciate it they somehow added that particular touch. So, anyway, and also in addition to that, they have own unique dialogue depending on what friends you're going to be saving for, like Tails for instance, that basically though Sonic was quite pleased about, except the fact that, well, you know what I mean. So, hard for me to explain honestly, but here we are on to the third and technically the final stage in terms of the classic era, aside from the bonus level that will show this off after. The most important aspect about the forms of this entire playthrough in mind, that basically, as you can tell, we ended up in Sky Century Zone, and obviously this stage was originated from Sonic & Knuckles in 1994. Well, to be more accurate though, every nowadays with Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, if you try to combine Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles combined into one with the lock-on technology back in the day in 30 years ago now, and relatively speaking, that was about the fact that you can able to actually experience this stage originally from the second half of the entire package. So, I digress. So yeah, I just really love performing a lot of stunts like this, especially concerning for the fact that I do know for the fact that obviously though this game does encourage you to able to go into alternate paths you want to take, which does add a lot of replay value if you enjoy that particular kind of stuff. Although, unlike in its 3DS counterpart of Sonic Generations, for some odd reason, is that certain levels from the classic era are ripped right out of the original counterparts, which, you know what I mean, if we get onto the 3DS version of Sonic Generations at some point soon. Well, not now though, just because, as you probably already expect, that we are now tackling through 2 games at a time when it comes to the New Year's resolution for our channel this time, because normally back then, we attempt able to tackle through 3 games at a time, which that sounds quite a lot, but ultimately that is about the fact that we just like to change things around, especially concerning for the fact that when it comes to uploading schedules alike, in terms of this game in particular with Sonic X Shadow Generations, it's going to be taking place on the uploading schedules department in weekdays. Although, as far as the forms of weekends as far as I'm concerned, well, we'll discuss more about that and during at some point in a later time. So, either way, we somehow completed Act 1 as Classic Sonic right here. And thankfully though, several of the achievements are actually being removed from the original version this time. Like, for instance though, is about the fact that with these level-specific achievements, like for example, in Green Hill Zone Act 1, you do need to find this well-hidden spring, and that way you should be able to find the achievement in the original version. Well, that's no longer the case in the remastered version of the game, so yeah, everything else will become to expect. And another example of this is that in Chemical Plant Act 2, as Modern Sonic, that you have to able to complete the level without entering underwater. And that's not the case in the remastered version of the game this time around either. Another one of those examples, which appears to be, well, Sky Century Zone Act 1, and basically though you have to complete the entire stage as Classic Sonic without falling once. So yeah, that's not the case from this point either. And that's mainly because several of those achievements have been replaced by the forms of not only for the child rescuing system, but it's also about the fact that the majority of them has been taken over thanks to the forms of the existence of Shadow Generations. So this basically means it's about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, that'll be double the fun and double the forms of a lot of impactful, speedy gameplay. So everything else will become to expect. Now, I fully appreciate about this though, when this game was first launched, when it comes to Sonic X Shadow Generations, I'm happy to report about the fact that this particular game was nowhere near as, like, buggy or messy compared to the forms of how it does it in Sonic Colors Ultimate, specifically on the Switch version as well, because obviously though, on the Switch version is horrendously bad on Sonic Colors Ultimate these days now, mainly with the forms of lengthy load times, as well as seizure-reducing visuals, and not to mention though, is about the fact that there's a whole bunch of glitches you might able to encounter if you have a first time playing for that particular version of the game. Although it has been patched throughout the years, but ultimately though, about the fact I feel like that Sonic Colors Ultimate is a bit underwhelming to me though. But thankfully though, with Sonic X Shadow Generations, no glitches has been encountered, including the seizure reducing thing as well. So at the very least though, that this particular game runs very well, not only for the sake of the fact that this game will run at 60 frames per second, for the PlayStation 4 version, as well as the PlayStation 5 version, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, even PC version as well, despite the fact that the PC version is already runs at 60 frames per second in the original version of Sonic Generations. However though, the Switch version still runs at 30 FPS, which I'm alright with, especially that luckily though, it actually runs very well, specifically Sonic Generations portion of the forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations, because obviously though with no load times, not to mention though is about the fact that, like I said this before, thankfully there's no glitches to be found, apart from the fact that I found a couple of them on the Switch version most likely, which I would try to show you guys that, but maybe in another time, because just I'm sure for the fact that we'll save that particular topic in the later days to come. So anyway, so now we've pretty much done with the forms of Sky Century Act 2, and this also means we've somehow rescued Knuckles the Echidna.
Thanks for the help. Not that I needed it. Now let's get some payback on that monster.
Ha! Get in line, Knucklehead. All right.
So, if you think we are basically done with the classic era, oh, there's actually more to it than that, because in addition to able to try to find not only the remaining red star rings, but as well as the forms of trying to find any other Chao, but there's also challenge acts. So this means about the fact that we have to go through every single missions this time, as opposed to just one, unlike back in 2017. So with that being said, folks, suffice to say though, we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations, while we're playing through Sonic Generations remastered version of the game. Is that so much so, we're about to be tackling through the challenge acts, starting with the Green Hill Zone with Act 1 and Act 2 to start things off. So yeah, everything else will become to expect. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.